Javier, I think WWE tonight gets some points for just straightforward building up some key matches for SummerSlam 2 weeks away. I just thought they kept it simple. They let the wrestlers do their thing and told solid stories, building up Cody and Solo in a variety of ways, LA Knight and Logan Paul with a solid segment, Nia Jax and Bayley in multiple ways, and then kind of setting the stage for next week's SmackDown 2. Deciding who the men's tag team challengers will be, and even throwing in a little bit with the women's tag titles. Maybe I'm even leaving something out, but kind of big picture. I just thought this was a solid episode of SmackDown building to SummerSlam now that we know the matches, and they had the hook of a mystery partner. Not a big mystery. The most likely person was. What did you think?
They basically shot for par. Which I think was, it's fine because you still got a couple weeks. You don't need to hit anything out of the park now. You were able to also pretty much you had some video packages too with like Tiffany Stratton, to further those characters, and it was a fun show. I mean, and the important thing and the take home part and the only thing that really like put it, sunk the last putt in was the what I've been calling for, this version of Bloodline needs to, they're calling them savages, they're calling them monsters, and between the beatdown of Randy Orton last week and this week's savage beatdown of KO and to a lesser extent Cody, this is what they need the monsters. And definitely nice good to have Randy Orton around. I would hope to have Kevin Owens not around. Makes things a bigger threat for Cody heading into SummerSlam. He has no friends. And see who else, because this would be like his supporting cast being taken out, and now are we looking at Roman Reigns coming back and helping him out, or John Cena? I don't know what his schedule's like. If you get a cameo by him to set something up for the future, some sort of help has to come, and you would look for someone who's bigger than KO and where Randy Orton is at this point, in the story, where he's more of a supporting character. Somebody else who comes to help him, because nobody else was there to help him. You didn't have Ciampa or Gargano out helping him, and so it's going to be interesting. And right now, Cody's under threat. This version of Bloodline seems dangerous. They're living up to their reputation. I kind of wish they were a little bit more. This is one of those cases where I kind of wish they were a little bit more open with the blood, because I think that would take it a little bit step forward. So yeah, I mean, so far they're doing good, and setting up what's coming up next pretty nicely.
Do you think Roman Reigns shows up at SummerSlam? Is that, do you think that is right? More than predicting, do you think the timing is right for that?
I don't know. I mean, either SummerSlam or the night after. It really, we still have a couple of weeks to see how this shakes up. If he does get any help from someone that's not normally around, but that is worthy of standing in the ring with Cody. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they've been hammering home a lot of the stuff that Solo's doing, which has been straight up disrespectful for, to the Roman Reigns, with the whole acknowledgement. He's really, laying that in. The necklace thing, it's not the Uma Plata, that is a hold, but which I'm talking about. So, and they've been really hitting those points hard, which makes me think that him showing up sooner rather than later is a possibility. I'd almost prefer to go a little bit further, but I haven't worked out the timing of how everything would spread out between now and WrestleMania, and I am assuming Rock is going to be involved in WrestleMania, so I haven't really seen in terms of like the timeline. So, but I could see him showing up as early as SummerSlam to help an outnumbered Cody Rhodes. I could see Cody Rhodes be the type of guy who makes this match a no disqualification match. And that would then open up Roman Reigns showing up to end up helping him, if that ends up being the case. But and even the whole thing today of the handicap match, is an echo of what happened after the WrestleMania where Cody lost, that Cody wanted to rematch because Roman lost. And Roman set that set the rules that whoever Cody teams up with is going to pay a price. In Roman's case, he was not going to that person would never get a title shot. And that was when Brock Lesnar came out, because at that point he didn't have the title shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then Solo basically playing the same thing, saying that whoever joins up with Cody is going to pay a price, and it ended up being Kevin Owens. I mean, no surprise to nobody. And it's the type of thing that Kevin Owens would do, and then he ends up paying the price.
Couple things. One, how do you think Solo is doing? The material's great. Like, just as you said at the beginning of your answer, agitating Roman, setting up a huge pop. I mean, it's sort of the angle, the long-term story arc version of a hot tag in a tag match, like Kevin Owens leaping to take Cody. When Roman shows up, it's going to be kind of the equivalent of a hot tag. This fresh guy who's been away for a while after all this prodding and disrespect from Solo and company. When he shows up, it's going to be huge. And it's going to work. But how good do you think Solo has been in this role? This week, he's leaning back in his chair. He's flanked by his 3 cohorts. Does he have the aura that you wish he had to maximize this storyline, or does he still have a ways to go? How are you feeling about that?
Again, I'll go back to the golfing analogy and say par. I don't think that he's, he hasn't totally like elevated to another level. But that's a big ask for anybody. That requires someone special. And, it's kind of sad to say he's not necessarily special, but he's doing what's being asked of him. And in the role, he's not supposed to be Roman Reigns. He is supposed to be a lesser version of Roman Reigns. So what you need to, really have to hammer home is the fact that he's a more dangerous, unstable character. Again, and that's where I'm like a little bit like hit, in the middle when it comes to it, because I like the violence they've done, which is a little bit higher than the violence we generally see in WWE. But this would be like one of the moments where I would like to see like it needs a moment like what The Rock did heading into WrestleMania, with the beatdown by the truck. He needs to have, that group needs to have, like, I still think I want more danger. I want more out of them. I want to be scared of them. I want to be uncomfortable when they show up. How they're willing to do that, considering, where they're at, and, rumors swirling around when they go to Netflix, will have a little bit more carte blanche to do that kind of story. So this kind of feels like what should be I'm going to say R, but not like because of, but just, to go with with analogy, like what should be a strong, like an R, with like blood and guts, not extreme, obviously. I'm talking about like, a serious kind of story where it's kind of like, you then go and then you watch the made for TV version where all the bad words are like, sassafras, and a lot of the scenes are kind of cut out. So it kind of feels a little bit more tame, that for what I think the storyline calls for, and for what those characters call for, and what the announcers are, the way the announcers are describing it. But I do like the, but with those limitations that you can't go that far on network TV, I think, and maybe probably for the audience they have right now, and they're catering to right now, I think that they did as good as you could probably get, and I would like to see them continue to see, push that line without necessarily going over with like the sponsors and stuff like that. Can't hear you.
Ken Arnold, regarding Solo and our topic of how he's doing, says Solo Sikoa and crew look much more comfortable doing these pre-recorded promos in a dark room than in front of a crowd. That comes to mind every time I watch those Bloodline 2.0 promos. They're leaning on, special effects, lighting, perhaps second and third takes if they need to. It felt kind of late in the Solo promo where I kind of did a double take. Did he just like skip a syllable, or it wasn't bad enough to have to redo it, but like he isn't a polished top guy, but like you said, it's par. The answer to my question to you is it's as good as it needs to be, but it's not much better than that, but that's okay. In part because he one, you just want people to like Roman. You don't want somebody cooler than Roman or tougher than Roman. But he has Jacob Fatu. I mean, that adds this whole other element to it. So I'm fine with Solo in the role. But I still don't, with all this energy and effort put into building him up. When I think of him against Cody, I don't think anybody is thinking Solo's going to be Cody. And it's SummerSlam. You want your world title challenger at an event the level of SummerSlam, ideally to be someone who at least a good, healthy portion of the audience sees as an actual threat to win. And I just don't think that is going on with Solo. I just don't think he's been protected enough in that way and portrayed that way. It ultimately doesn't matter. We talked on this YouTube channel, PWTorch YouTube channel here, about Rich Fan and I did about the SummerSlam lineup and how it's an ensemble show. And that is just fine that it's an ensemble show because there's enough depth that you can get away with that. And that's actually the cover story of this week's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter too. It's just kind of looking at the depth of the show, but there's not that just singular obvious standalone main event above all others. So I'm fine with it. As far as Roman goes, chat room has a lot of chatter about when he'll come back. I'm leaning towards he doesn't show up at SummerSlam. I've been pretty consistent in thinking that. I don't feel strongly. I don't know. But I don't know if he comes back at SummerSlam, how you keep whatever you're doing with him hot enough for when you actually want to cash in the Heyman payoff and whatever you do next with Roman. I could see it being a longer wait by a good bit. And I'm curious too, and this gets thrown into kind of the pace of things, is Randy Orton tonight. And I want to talk about that next after we introduce the show. Because, Cody really talked him up, called him a brother. I mean, it's just pro wrestling style setting up something. And I want to talk about the prospects and timing of Cody and Orton. But I'm not ruling out. Reigns could show up. You do Reigns solo. Reigns beats Solo. Jacob Fatu attacks him after the match. He's injured. Reigns is gone for 3 more months. Comes back, in January for Netflix, and he wants revenge against. I mean, I'm just throwing one scenario out there. I mean, there's ways he can come back, but also then go away again, perhaps at the hands of Jacob Fatu, and maybe we still don't see Paul Heyman by then, or maybe Heyman shows up with Reigns and he gets beat up. So a lot of ways they can still do this. Like I said, I'm not ruling it out. But let's pause, Javier, and introduce ourselves and the show. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show. We're covering the Friday, July 19th, 2024 episode of SmackDown. Right after SmackDown ends, we go live on the PWTorch YouTube channel. We thank those of you who are joining us live and also participating in the chat room. We invite all of you to join us live. You can just go to our PWTorch YouTube channel after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. There's a link also in my TV reports at our website, PWTorch.com. I do written reports with analysis every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night covering the 3 big primetime cable shows, or 2 cable shows and 1 broadcast show like tonight. And you can also, if you're a VIP member or a Patreon supporter, get a link to become a video caller. You're invited to do that. That is just exclusive for our VIP members and Patreon supporters. Just go to my TV report or our Patreon page to find that. It is different every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Wade Keller, editor, publisher, and founder of Pro Wrestling Torch and the aforementioned PWTorch.com website, and the host of various podcasts, including this, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Shows, and also the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast, which this week featured Rich Fan, and we covered a lot on SummerSlam. If you're interested in our discussion on that lineup, check that out. We also talked AEW and more. So, Blue Logo Show. All you have to do is search Wade Keller in your podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iOS, Android. We're just about everywhere. Just search Wade Keller, subscribe to both. They're both free. And while you're at it, search PWTorch to get our 3rd main podcast feed that's free. That's the PWTorch Daily Cast. That's where our whole crew of different hosts covering different specific topics each day of the week assemble. And so there's a new show every day on that feed. We definitely encourage you to check that out. There is a WWE-based show acknowledging WWE. Speaking of which, Javier Machado is one of the co-hosts of that show, and he is a co-host with me tonight. If you're watching us on YouTube, you've seen him. If you're listening to our podcast version of this, the audio one, you've heard him. Javier, good to have you back on the SmackDown Post Show.
Always good to join you. And if you want to see me, the unleashed version of Javier, you could check out Another WWE. Where, yeah, I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble at some point on that show.
We'll see. I mean, I'm kind of wishing I could find and suspend more people. So, I mean, it's a fun thing to do. So, but there's all kinds of great shows on the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. Wrestling Night in America with Greg Parks, the PWTorch 90s Past Cast, the PWT Talks NXT crew, and more. But if you're into WWE, the Acknowledging WWE show is the way to go. Hey, I just rhymed. So again, search PWTorch and subscribe to the colorful Daily Cast logo. And there's a different show every day of the week. While you're at, also see a charcoal-colored PWTorch logo that features free samples of our VIP shows. So subscribe to that for free. You can upgrade to the full VIP podcast lineup if you are using your Apple account. If you upgrade within that app, that's a cool way to go about it. So check that out. So we're going to get back to talking about this show. I want to start with Cody and Randy. I do want to tell people, if you want to participate by email, even if you don't watch us live on YouTube, you can still send us questions or comments to be read on the air while you're watching Dynamite, SmackDown, and Raw. Wade Keller podcast at gmail.com. Wade Keller podcast at gmail.com is how you contribute to the show if you can't be with us live as a video caller or as part of the chat. Wade Keller podcast at gmail.com. You can also send questions in anytime for our flagship, and we'll get to a lot of those questions sprinkled into our flagship shows that we usually record on Tuesdays. All right. So Javier, before we get to video callers and more from the chat and email, Cody Rhodes talked up Randy Orton. He's like a brother to him. It's the classic, pro wrestling trope. Build somebody up as this, you're super loyal to them. They're loyal to you. I feel bad that he got beat up. Coming to my aid, talking up Randy. And I mean, it's transparently setting up, if they want to go that direction, and I think they are, towards a Cody Randy match. I asked in my written report at PWTorch.com, if and when that match happens, and does Randy go full-fledged heel, or is there just a disagreement and fans kind of get to pick them, or they sort of are reluctant to even see them fight, or do they go hardcore heel with Randy? And is there a chance that Cody runs into the issue he did in AEW, facing a popular heel? Some fans choose the heel and start looking at Cody differently. Is WWE playing with fire, or do you think they've got that accounted for? Or is today's WWE audience different than AEW's audience of a few years ago?
I think that they are playing with matches. They haven't lit them yet. But yeah, I would have that concern, particularly if you have Randy going heel. Honestly, I would almost prefer like a babyface matchup, but with Randy Orton kind of being mean to try to get the most out of Cody, kind of like a test kind of situation for him. Because I really don't think people are really going to buy Randy Orton as a heel. He switches back and forth a lot. I'm not as interested in that, because at this point it starts feeling more like, okay, well, they turned him heel just so they could get this match. Now they could account for that by having him do again something really nasty, really horrendous. The Enforcer was dropped, so maybe they bring in Arn Anderson and kill and take him out, Legend Killer style. Maybe something along those lines. But if you're going to go, me personally, what I would prefer to see, I don't know if it's better for business or not, is basically just a friendly rivalry. Hey, yeah, we have our back, which starts getting more and more testy as the build to the match. They get more and more testy, a little bit similar to what they did with Ospreay and Swerve, where one's trying to get, you don't have the killer instinct, and like maybe Randy Orton do that, do stuff to try to get the killer instinct out of them, but not like a full blown, heel kind of situation, and really try to somehow frame it as like this veteran who might not win testing the younger Cody Rhodes, kind of, try to frame it that as much as you could possibly can. The crotchety master, finally, acting as an actual roadblock to him, to have him go to the next stage. Maybe even part of the feud where maybe things don't, maybe Cody escapes by the skin of his teeth at SummerSlam, and Cody needs to, and Randy Orton decides to push him to have more of a killer instinct kind of story, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I don't want just a straight up, here he is punting people in the head again.
Yeah, you want to be able to circle back to Randy being a babyface, because that's going to be where fans want him to be. So I think you're onto something. I think that's probably what they'll do. Derek Hubbard in the chat says, I don't know how passionately people will boo Randy at this stage. Selfishly, I don't want to boo Randy. He's earned too much respect from me. Azan in the chat room, Azan White says, Randy has the factor like Ric Flair as a heel, where people would as a heel, where people cheer him no matter what. I think he meant to say there. And let's see, he added, I'd like to do Randy and Cody like Warrior and Hogan, where both remain baby faces. I mean, I think you could pull that off, but you are putting people in a position then to still pick between them. And that still is, like you said, not lighting the match, but it's there. Sean responds, I really think people will boo Randy against Cody. He's such a great heel. So little counterpoint there.
I think they'll boo him, but I think they'll boo him, but more along the lines, if they do something nefariously enough, but a lot more along the lines where we're going to boo this to go along, as opposed to like really, getting invested in the match and just playing along with it.
I could see
really
that.
getting invested.
Yep. All right, let's go to our first video caller. We'll go to Sean from Tennessee first tonight. Sean, welcome. Good to see you. What's going on? How you feeling about SmackDown?
No, I'm feeling good. Love your guys' conversation. No, I was I'm like always wondering if Wade's like seeing me in the background. Like, am I making faces? Like Wade's probably looking at me like, oh, good, this is gonna be fun. No, just going back to what you were saying. I see what Javier, I see where you're coming from. I get you're leaning, worried about turning Randy heel, and I they're all fair points. They're all fair points. I don't argue those points. I just think you have so much backstory, and I just think Randy is so much better as a heel, and I have respect for what he does as a heel, that yes, I love him, but I love to want to boo him because of how good he is in that role. And I just think you have so much backstory, and Cody's better as that underdog baby face. And my only worry about the whole thing is, like you said, Wade, with this promo tonight by Cody, where he's just saying, he's my brother, just having no thought that this could ever happen. And that's my worry. Is he's going to look like a dope. And it's just going to be like, oh gosh, they just turned Randy and made him look, and he had no idea it was coming. It's like, Randy, Randy better than anyone. This is possible. You've been with him as heels for years and years and years. Now, granted, they turned on him in the story previously, and that's why, that would be interesting to see how they pull that off. But yeah, I want there to be backstory. I don't want it to be, hey, we're just faces. We have respect for each other. Yeah, I want to one-up you. And I don't know. I don't buy into that story. It's too basic for me. I want them to have layers to it. And I just think Randy is a full-blown heel. There's backstory and there's layers that they could build onto this, which I want. And so, push back on that, give me whatever you think. But that's where I think they should go.
No, I mean that's definitely that's definitely a way they can go, and I think you could do it both ways. I'm just saying my personal preference, because I think that because Randy Orton, when he's had his best heel runs, he's basically played different types of heels, where he was just, there was one where he was just, the Viper, and then the Legend Killer, and there were different kind of things.
Right.
If he could find a new, he's almost like like in Jericho, who reinvents himself. If he could reinvent a new version of heel to play. I think that's he could do that, which is what I'm talking about, the mentor who gives them a hard time as their match comes up, but then once the dust is settled, they'll shake hands, that kind of thing. Or he can still be like in a heelish role, but just not like punting people in the face, that kind of level, that because we've seen that, and that kind of will feel more like Randy Orton going through the greatest hits as opposed to coming up with something new. Now, if they come up with something new, then yeah, I'm and something intriguing, then I'm all for it. But I think in that kind of story of the mentor who is, who you have to beat him, I don't know if you ever followed Dragon Ball, but how Master Roshi enters the tournament and his students have to beat him, that kind of deal, where he acts like a roadblock, and he could be heelish on that. Again, nothing like, setting somebody on fire or kicking Ric Flair in the face,
right.
That kind of thing, that kind of extreme where you start getting more, into the cartoonish level of villainy for him, where he's like just, off the rocker. I don't, I'm fine with him being heelish, but more along the lines of like realistic heel, as opposed to, the more cartoonish super villain, twirly, mustache twirly, saber-tooth kind of character.
And I have to say that I am pretty confident, or I'm pretty confident they will come up with something novel and new. Sean, I do. I mean, I don't think they're gonna. I have more confidence in what this current creative team led by Paul Levesque is doing than I did under Vince McMahon. I mean, I think they're in a different place. So I think they want to do right by Cody. I think they're aware of his history. They're aware of Randy's history. I think they're gonna have a sophisticated story that doesn't feel like, oh, now it's time to turn Randy heel again, and we're going to be naive to the fact that fans are still going to cheer and, pop for an RKO and all that. I think they're going to account for all of that. And that's what makes it fun to watch it happen when it happens. I mean, I think they have a variety of ways to go. Javier and you have both kind of talked about different nuances, and I am confident they'll come up with something. It would be guesswork to get too specific, but I don't think this is going to be a disappointment, or I don't think we'll be rolling our eyes at it. Sean.
And going back to, I hope during these next few weeks, because Randy, I don't know if he'll be back next week, but I'm assuming he'll be back the Friday right before SummerSlam. They need to do something maybe at SummerSlam during, if they do it, because like you said, I liked, Javier, how you brought up a no disqualification match. I actually like that because you can have all these different nuances you want to have and be able to make a little more sense. And then have Randy maybe do something happens during that match where Cody's like, ooh, I saw something, where I wondered a little bit more. Like, I'm kind of up, my antlers are up a little bit. I'm like, is Randy up to something? I don't think so, but at least make him think about it a little bit and not just look like a total dweeb when Randy turns on him and he has no idea it's coming. And you're like, oh gosh, really? This is the Cody we're going to have now, where he just has no idea. So it's going to be fun. I'm loving what Solo's done lately. I mean, I'm glad they're just building them up piece by piece, making them feel more daunting and more tough to overcome. I think, it was basic booking again tonight, but it was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I thought it was good, for what they were trying to do. Going back to, this is something kind of small, but when they said that when Bianca came out and she wrestled Chelsea, this feels small, but I think it's something for me is, I think there's still something they could do with Chelsea. And I was hoping that they could have had maybe like a 5 or 6, 7 minute match, just something to where you could show Chelsea has gotten better because I think she's good in the ring. I think she's better than what people think. Have them have a decent match, nothing spectacular. It can't go long because you can't have Bianca going 11 minutes with her, but 6 or 7, have Chelsea get some good moves off, make her feel like there's something there, because the finish was just awful. Like, it was, I mean, I don't know. It just felt like it didn't need to be there. I would have, if you're going to have that match, do something with Chelsea to make her feel credible. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a choice that they keep making, which is, Chelsea's a comedy figure. Going longer with her against Bianca has some risk, Javier. Is it worth doing that? Is it too late? And is Bianca the wrong person to do that against? Just having a longer match? I don't think people would stop watching. I don't think that's a concern, right, Javier?
Yeah, I think that when they're ready to move her more into a face kind of role, I think she'll probably end up having one of those. And they kind of did a little bit with this one, saying that, she got the upper hand early on Bianca. And, she's definitely like one of those, back in the day jobbers that would get the hope spot against the heel. And you're like, oh, look, maybe, kind of like the 1, 2, 3 kid. So, like, I think you could set her up like a 1, 2, 3 kid kind of scenario, where eventually she gets, when she starts kind of like, morphing more into a babyface kind of role. I could see, them basically going with that. I didn't love the ending. In a vacuum, it was fine for me because Chelsea Green tried to cheat with the tights, and then she just got rolled up, and it showed the better skill that Bianca Belair has, that Chelsea Green couldn't counter in a vacuum. But overall, what we've always seen in WWE is that they roll up, fluke. That's more of a fluke win to protect the other person. And I'm like, I don't think you need to be protecting Chelsea Green from Bianca Belair. So that's why I'm like, in the whole thing of the WWE, it kind of feels like, this is the kind of victory that Belair would get over Chelsea Green, so they could just have another match down the road, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Even though, just like if you would take in the vacuum, it just makes sense that the better that Bianca is the more experienced, better wrestler, skillful, and her technique is what beat her, not necessarily hitting a power move or what have you. But yeah, I think that if she continues on the road she's in, and people really get into her, that she might have like the Otis spot, like where she'll be involved in a storyline where you really want her to win, like how Otis hasn't really been protected either. But when they were doing the Gable storyline, you wanted to see him break away from Gable. Maybe have her, you'll like, I'm pretty sure at some point you're going to be seeing Chelsea Green in a kind of storyline like that too. Plus, I'm eagerly awaiting when we get the hot mess Chelsea Green character, which I'm sure she'll want to do at some point. Right. But yeah, I mean, I do enjoy her. I think right now they're just using her as a cog to just just get matches, and someone that could lose to the bigger stars.
Sean, anything else for us?
Yeah, it's fair. The last thing I'll bring up, because I want other guys to get on and talk about some other stuff. I wanted to go kind of all through the show with Bayley and Nia, the promo interview before and then the stuff after. I understand why Bayley brought up the stuff about Nia and what she's done in the past. Again, it's kind of makes me mad because I've always, people can bring that up all the time. And it's like, okay, yes, she did do that. She did, but she's not that way anymore. She's not like that anymore, but I like that Bayley brought up history. History needed to be brought up in her sense. I mean, you did injure me. You did knock me out 7 years ago, which I liked. But Bayley I like how, she talked about how she's changed and she's better and all this stuff. I'm like, you've kind of changed for the worse. You haven't been better since you were 7 years ago. You were a lot better 7 years ago than you are now. So I didn't really buy that. But I like the fire she showed during the interview. So I wanted to hear what you guys thought about the interview part of it. And then at the end, going into the Meechin Stratton match and the interference, I know it was interference. I know there was a lot of stuff going on, the shenanigans, what have you. I still wouldn't have Tiffany lose personally. After Nia just beat her last week, and then Tiffany's losing on a roll up. I just that was kind of weird to me. So I want to hear what you thought about the interview and then everything that happened at the end of the tag team, the Meechin and Stratton match and everything.
Yeah, in the Meechin Stratton match, pretty transparently, if you saw watching the finish, like, oh, they might do a tag this week. You got Nia Jax and Tiffany against Bayley and Meechin. Giving Meechin the win gave some extra credibility, Javier, to someone who easily you could have imagined just losing quickly and decisively. So with that aspect of it, so you comment on that, Javier, and then also the promo with Bayley and Nia Jax. Maybe start there with what Sean said in the first part of his question, which is, what do you think about the insider kind of reference to you didn't hurt me because you're vicious, you hurt me because you're clumsy? It can work on two levels. You can hurt somebody accidentally in football, basketball, hockey. I mean, there's clumsiness that leads to injuries as opposed to, a deliberate, good hard check in hockey or a good solid tackle. So, I mean, that it feels sort of sports-like to say that. I don't think it necessarily has to be seen only through the lens of you have to have this knowledge of Nia's reputation for being reckless and clumsy with opponents and causing legit injury. How do you feel about it, Javier?
Yeah, I did not like it at all because it's the clumsy thing because this is going to sound like a little bit I'm taking a shot at you, Wade, but the purpose of wrestling isn't to injure your opponent. it's to leverage their shoulders to the mat or get them to submit. You're not looking at to injure them. You're looking out to incapacitate them. Usually your baby face is going to want to not hurt someone. Same thing in combat sports. If MMA fighter breaks someone's leg, they're not going, the baby faces at least are not going to be celebrating the guy's broken leg. They're going to be worried and checking on him because they don't want the person to lose their livelihood. That's, and that's kind of been the wrestling trope for a long period of time, that the heels would use stuff like chop blocks and submission holds that would tear at body parts, while the baby faces would tend to use the submission that would choke somebody out and have them pass out. For that reason, because you don't want somebody, it's their livelihood, and that was kind of like a line of demarcation. The thing is that, but you're not going to worry about injuring somebody because it is a combat sport, and if an injury happens, it happens. Why she's saying that's clumsy that she got hurt is like saying well, you should have been protecting me and you didn't protect me because you're a big dumb oaf. That is definitely more on the outside of going into the meta. And what was the other thing she said? She said three things. I only was able to get one.
Reckless. You're reckless.
Reckless. Yes, reckless. And reckless is if you tell a wrestler that they're reckless, they might lose because they're reckless because they're not paying attention to their surroundings or get themselves in trouble. You go too fast and you get caught in a hold. That's when I hear reckless. But you hurt me because you were reckless as a negative, as opposed to it's her fighting style. It was, for me, it was way too much her bagging on the issues that she had, calling back to the concussions and stuff like that. And it wasn't, it to me wasn't in the spirit of the competition, so, and particularly, and it's, so if you're not aware of what Nia did, if you're only loosely paying attention, then it's going to sound like, just the words that you hear associated with a combat sport kind of scenario. But if you're any way kind of where it's going to sound like you're upset because you hurt me, but that's kind of like what's expected or what can possibly happen during a match, and you didn't protect me in a combat match. You shouldn't have thrown that kick because it broke my leg. That's not realistic to me. So I didn't like the way it came. Plus, Nia Jax has shown a lot of improvement, and yes, she's been much better. Why try to use that? Because that's trying to remind people of the go away heat she had, and I think that a lot of the heat she has that Nia Jax has now has morphed more into we don't like her, as opposed to we don't want you around. There's still people who probably act that way, but so, and then that's the thing. And now you're bringing back this kind of thing. And I really didn't like it. That I think was reminding of people of something you don't want to remind them of, because it was a negative that hurts the actual wrestler playing Nia Jax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. If you're is Paul Levesque really playing to that audience? And if he is, then what you're saying, Javier, is true. You're telling people, hey, remember when you didn't even want to pay to see her and you didn't like WWE hiring her in the first place, and she's done a good job, hasn't hurt people. So why remind you of it? If you aren't that person who's going to know that history, then what's the point of bringing it up? So, you're making an argument, a fair argument for sure against either of those things. I can go full circle back to, Bayley's just trying to say you're more clumsy than you are purposefully, effectively vicious. And that can just be a generic dig, I guess, that can kind of stand on its own too without history. Let me throw in a couple comments from the chat room. I flashed them on the screen. Bring Zach's back up here. Zach Barber. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. He said, bringing up Nia's history made perfect sense. Bayley was one of her victims. Just because she's learned a safer Bundy-esque style doesn't change the past.
Oh, Zach, I'm not Nia fan. Not Nia fan.
Look at,
can't let it go.
I love the Sean is animating some of my internal activity when I read some of Zach's comments. Zach's wonderful contributor to our shows, but Sean is personifying sometimes how I how I feel about some of his comments. Derek Hubbard said, I don't like the use of the word reckless. The goal of combat sports is to hurt your opponent in order to win. If you are reckless or dangerous, that is not much of an insult. Yeah, clumsy is. Reckless kind of just comes. I mean, maybe you would say Jacob Fatu is reckless. He's just unhinged and whatever, tameable. I don't know.
It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
the whole thing came out of nowhere. Like, it was just Bailey just said it, and I'm like, where did this come from? Like, you never brought up anything like this, and it's just all of a sudden out of nowhere you're bringing this up. Weird.
Yeah. Brock Benfield says in the chat, Nia has gotten much better. Javier, go ahead.
Yeah, it felt more like they went to this not because they had any, like, they weren't trying to prove a point or anything. I think it's just that they felt that they needed something to spice up the feud, and they decided to go into that history. But yeah, I mean, and yeah, clumsy and reckless and stuff. Clumsy is something you could use, but in context, he's saying that the move that you used was clumsy, and that's why I got hurt. As opposed to, like, because I mean, clumsy would be like, you could call that would be Austin Theory calling Grayson Waller, hey, you were clumsy and I got hurt because of that. Had he gotten hurt, that's more you would say someone who was your partner, and then if you break up, it's like, hey, it's your fault. That would be more along those lines if they were on the same side. And I got hurt because you were clumsy and we were on the same side. Then yeah, that works. But again, yeah, clumsy, reckless, and what was the other one?
Oh gosh,
big.
Big.
I think it was big. Yeah.
I mean that
big.
That was fine. Oh, you're big. I mean, it's a mean insult. You're big, and then that's why you squashed me. That's pretty much.
In Bailey's defense, we're firing hard at her this week. After the Brazilian butt lift comment last week. I mean, it's like we can't be too picky. Bailey's gonna fire back with a week to stew over such. So, Sean, did we sufficiently cover the other part of your question?
What did you think of
Tiffany and Michin?
Yeah, was it just Tiffany losing just because of to make it a tag, or did you just like? Is it? I mean, I
think they needed. It was such a fluky loss, and I don't think she needs to be the character who goes undefeated. And I think they need to give Michin a little bit of credibility, where you're like, she's not just this. I don't know, like this appendage of that doesn't have credibility if they're going to try to build the tag match up next week. What do you think, Javier?
Yeah, I think it was just a little bit to give the heel a little bit of her comeuppance, and I think it was honestly, I think the whole purpose of the skit is because they're going to give her own version of the Money in the Bank briefcase, but maybe like a purse or a clutch or something, a fancy clutch or something like that for her to carry the contract around. Is most likely we're going to do that. They can then start selling. That would be my guess of the ultimate reason for doing this. And then, and obviously set up a match that you're going to get, on your way to SummerSlam too, so they can fill up some time and, slow roll the feud.
Sometimes the answer to why do they do things is because they have a lot of TV time to fill, and they just want to create a little backstory, and creating a little backstory is more important than a tiny bit, of micro damage that might be done to somebody. But in this case, I think it's totally defensible. Sean,
really
thanks.
Fast. This is something small that I don't think anybody's going to talk about. That's why I'm kind of bringing this up. What did you guys think about they had in the corner during one of the matches, the results of what had happened, and then something else came on the corner of the screen, like at the beginning of the show or during oh gosh, Javier, did you notice it? It was on the left corner of the screen. It happened during one of the matches. It said Andrade defeated Carmelo, and then it said Bianca defeated Chelsea, and I was like, that's interesting. Like, I never thought they would do something like that. I just didn't know what you guys might have thought about it if you saw it. And I was curious.
I did not notice. So now I'm intrigued. I must have been typing my report when that. Javier, did you notice? Maybe Sean's just seeing things.
I didn't notice. Then again, I'm also not watching a US stream, so.
The first one was different. The first one was even different. It was really interesting. I just can't remember what it was. Gosh, I wish I'd have written it down. Go back and I'm curious. I'll put it on. I'll go back and look at it and put it on the chat because I'll go back and look at it and see.
You're not sure what match it was in? You're not sure what match it was in?
No, I can go back and DVR though and find it while you guys are talking to other people.
Yeah, do that.
Javier, your show with Kevin's fun. Go VIP, everybody. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, Sean. All right. By the way, VIP, just super quick, put the graphic up for our YouTube viewers. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Support us. Get a ton in return for your money. You can subscribe and gain instant access to over 35 years of archives, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, including a show that I hosted on KFAN with some big-name guests in the early 90s with a call-in format like this. Also, new content every week. The Fix with Todd Martin is one of the signature shows that we have front and center on this graphic. And the Wade Keller Hotline. If you like our post shows, but you don't watch the TV show start to finish, and you'd like to know what happened before you watch our post shows or listen to our post shows on the podcast feed, I do Wade Keller lines for VIP members right after I do the post show. Record about a 15 to 25-minute review, start to finish, add extra comments to things we don't get to in the post show. You can actually start with that and then watch the post show, and you'll know everything we're talking about. The whole context is there. So I know people email and really value that because not everybody has time to watch every primetime show, but they don't want to also feel left out or lost when they watch or listen to our post shows. So one of many, many perks that comes with VIP membership. We also have a every day, on average, once a day, sometimes more than that, we put up a VIP show, VIP podcast from 18 years ago on the anniversary date of the shows. We've been doing podcasts for over 2 decades, and on our VIP Vault is what it's called, features shows Wade Keller Hotlines with behind-the-scenes insider information. Just really fun to kind of dig into our coverage, just like we do here, with some of the same voices, including me, talking about the big events of 18 years ago. Plus, every week, the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter drops for our full VIP level membership. This week, it has my cover story on SummerSlam. It has newsletter exclusive columns from Greg Parks and Rich Fan. And it comes in PDF and all text formats. You can read it on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. And I encourage you to go VIP. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. You can subscribe through Patreon, which gives you access through Spotify to our shows. You can subscribe using your Apple account through our PWTorch VIP app. And you can also subscribe with PayPal, credit card, or debit card and get the full library access and customizable VIP feeds. And I just updated them to the RSS feeds today, the categories. So now you can get the 7-star podcast, the Collision Cafe covering AW Collision, and more specific feeds on your phone. So they aren't just one long feed with everything we do. You can split it up by show or by clusters of shows. All right, let's get back to our conversation here. Javier, I want to give a shout out to another super chat. This from Bid Moon. Thank you, Bid Moon, who says Wade and LA Knight are the GOATs. More of those, please. I'll take it. A super chat saying nice things. Can't complain about that. Thank you, Bid Moon. All right, so let's bring Rude Dog on, also known as Hendrick. Welcome. We got super kicks on your T-shirt. Got to bring that up, and you have notes galore. Look at that. I love it. What's up? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Good to talk to you, Wade and Javier. I listened to the Acknowledging WWE podcast today, and it was a great listen.
Excellent.
So go VIP to check that out. And even though you said
Hendrick,
it went off the rails immediately, it was still good.
What were you doing? What were you doing while listening? I'm always curious how people were you just chilling out, or were you on a
doing dishes?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yep. People say they're on a subway in some foreign country, and we used to ask people, well, we can still do it. Hashtag WKPWP. Tweet out. I don't really like promoting Elon anymore, but tweet out photos of what you do when you watch, or send it to us on email, and we'll give you a shout out. It's cool to hear about people walking their dog or going on climbing mountains or whatever, and listening to our shows. Anyway, Hendrick, back to
you. So I've been a reluctant fan of Logan Paul, but he's proved me wrong, and I appreciate him, at least in the ring. But today he did something that rubbed me the wrong way with his promo with LA Knight, where he called him his legit name Sean, which just felt kind of lame, and like someone that really amateurish that didn't know how to get real heat and was trying to I don't know, get under his skin and be cool, because LA Knight's real name is Sean Ricker, I believe. And so what do you think about that? Did it rub you the wrong way? Did you even notice it?
I noticed. Yeah, I had to look up how to spell his name in my written report. So Shaun. I mean, to me, it's sort of like, Punk takes offense when people call him Phil. What does he call it? His legal name, his government name.
Government name
for that. Government name. Yep. And what JBL took issue with someone calling Undertaker. So I mean, it's just a thing, like there's the name you want to be called, and if you call somebody by something else, it sounds like you're getting overly personal with them. Hey, only my mom calls me that now, whatever. So I think it's fine if you want to be a jerk heel, you call someone by a name that they prefer not to be called. You don't want to overdo it, because sometimes it comes across as, hey, look at me, I'm an insider guy catering to internet fans to try to give myself a little dopamine rush later when the internet goes crazy and social media goes crazy. And you don't want to be one of those people. If there's a lot of them out there, but I would think you don't want to be one of those people. But to me, Logan's a perfect guy to do that. What do you think, Javier?
Yeah, I mean, it just felt low hanging fruit to me more than anything else. It didn't really overly bother me, but yeah, I just thought it was like it was a cheap, a cheap shot that it wasn't really necessary, because then at that point I'm like, Shaun, oh, that's probably his actual real name. So, it's one of those promos where it kind of like walked up to the line on some cases, which was like similar to the previous one. Him calling a little bit too much attention to what people are saying. I liked LA Knight owning up to the whole, Rock comparisons. Oh, like I haven't heard that before 100 times over. So, he no sold it. So, and it took the sting of out of a lot of the stuff that Logan Paul said about him. And then ultimately, when he hit him with the brother line, was like, I immediately started going like, are they setting up a Jake versus Logan match in the future? Because he was quick to sign that thing when he said, oh, you don't have the testicular fortitude that your brother does, and then that's what pushed Logan over the edge to sign the thing. So I'm like, there might be some sibling jealousy there, and maybe that leads to something down the road. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. I didn't love this, and I'm kind of. I think the whole thing between the two of them has been fine, but I was like really expecting fireworks, so I'm a little bit disappointed over the whole thing.
All right, Hendrik, back to you.
Yeah, and well, Jake Paul might be looking for another payday, because he was supposed to box Mike Tyson this weekend, but that's not happening, and he had to pivot to an MMA guy that I'm not even familiar about. So that's going to be a real dip in the ratings. So, anywho. And I heard he actually has interest in the WWE, so bite your tongue, Javier. He might be coming.
Well, I mean, I've kind of heard, the rumors that, there was some interest there, and, if they could make a Logan Paul, Jake Paul tag team or a one-on-one, that, that'll be that's a WrestleMania celebrity match.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing, Carmelo Hayes. He was pretty hot in NXT. He got drafted in the first round of the draft for SmackDown, but really hasn't done much of anything since the call-up. It kind of feels like the old regime type of call-up where you have a hot prospect and you just cool him down immediately. I mean, what do you think so far about Carmelo on SmackDown? Because to me, it has not been money.
He hasn't been great. He's been okay. I mean, at first I was kind of like, well, this is weird. They're not pushing him at the level that you would think. Well, they had him be a first round draft pick so he could brag about it. It's like any, basketball references, draft pick number 1 overall or first round is a bragging point, and he's using basketball analogies. So I think he got drafted high, and him not then getting pushed at a high level shouldn't. He's always underperforming where he was drafted, because he wasn't drafted. I think part of why he was drafted there was just for him to have that as a talking point as a heel. But I think he's kind of going to be a mid-carder for WWE. I mean, I mean, it's a crowded field. There's no shame in that right now, Javier. It's a really good lineup, and I don't think Carmelo is being underpushed in terms of where he falls on the depth chart. The question is, in part of this, just his performance was a little clumsy on the microphone early, but are they putting him in a position to maximize being an upper mid Carter at this point? What have you felt about his performances and how and the positions they put him in at this point?
I mean, I loved when he first was standing across from Bobby Lashley. It's kind of been downhill for me since then. Feels like he's on the same trajectory, the same trajectory path that Austin Theory has been on. I think the original idea was that he gets drafted number 1 and he was going to act like he's he's like the hot, everything. And then he's, Lashley would have taught him a lesson and, broken him down and then to build him back up. But it feels like that's kind of gone off the wayside. So I don't know, maybe there's something they saw they didn't like, or maybe he might be like in a similar situation as Rhea Ripley was early on, because she had issues when she first came over. So maybe that might be something, along the lines of what's going on. But yeah, I mean, he just put up a good match with, and man, that was an easy crowd. Put up a good match with Andrade. But then he was a clean loss. So, I'm not sure what they're planning on doing with him, because right now, again, he feels like a Austin Theory, Grayson Waller kind of in the same kind of like realm right now.
Yeah. Andrade did twice in the match, decided to posture the crowd at one point for about 15 seconds while he had Carmelo in the corner before doing his move. And it's one thing as a heel to do it if it's going to backfire, but boy, is it rude to do it to your opponent if you're going to hit the move, because now you're asking Carmelo to sit there and sell for 15 seconds and just lay there and take a move. And it just feels so like house show in front of 500 people, indie show in front of 300 people type move. And Andrade is really talented, but there's some just bad habits I wish that they would.
Well, it's a very lucha thing, and I'm surprised that they haven't walked him out of it. Because his former
Roosh does it in
partner,
AEW.
yeah, his former partner does it all the time. So it's like because they're playing to the crowd.
Yeah. It's just not WWE style. I mean, I know people make they're like people don't like. Certain people like people praising WWE style, but there are attention to detail things that they do that I appreciate, and I think it's just a matter of time before they. Well, maybe not. Maybe they don't think it's a big deal, and they just think nobody notices. But anyway, but there was a lot. I thought there was a lot good on that match too. I mean, I think they got something out of it.
And that was something that happened during his NXT run, where he would do the same thing, but that in there it actually ended up costing him, and it wasn't just Selena Vega showed up and actually beat it out of him that he started going on a good run. And I thought that was like his best run was his run against Aleister Black at the time. But I just it's not. Yeah, it does feel like very disrespectful. Particularly since WWE is a little bit more closer to combat sport than the theatricality of lucha libre.
Right. Yeah, and the crowds are different. It's just a different. Every company has their own presentation, and when you take it to another country, and there's this whole other culture of presentation. Some things work there, and they just seem out of place in this context. By the way, Hendrik, before we go back to it, I just want to get Sean from Tennessee did a super chat and said during the Andrade match in the bottom left corner, it had stuff that is still to come, which is kind of what AW is doing. And I did notice that. And I thought it was weird too, because I just glanced up as it was leaving the screen, but I don't think they even had it was super graphically enhanced. It just was sort of there. But I mean, it's a smart thing to do. It's one. You can visually plug something without interrupting the match verbally. But I'm not sure if there was more to it, Sean. So if you find other things that we missed, let us know. Hendrik, back to you.
Well, I know in the main event, at the bottom of the screen on the left, it did say a couple of results from previously in the night. I know they had mentioned the Andrade match. I think it was the the Tiffany Stratton match as well. But yeah, that was new to me. I was like, oh well, that's kind of sports like I can get with that, you know.
Yeah, I don't think there's not a negative or a big positive. It's fine to do that. You know, hey, here's what you missed earlier. Let's reinforce if you did see it, what happened. Maybe encourages people to, tune in earlier. By the way, along the topic of Carmelo, Brock Benningfield in the chat said, if Carmelo doesn't get a win soon, it's going to start to take a wrong turn. Darrell Freeman says, everyone can't be going after the title. Samelo right now is being used every week on TV, which I think he'd rather be doing than sitting in the back doing nothing. And he adds, right now he's got to find his way. We fall in love with guys and we want them to have the thing that we see that they should have, but they got to find the right place and time to put him into something. So there you go. All right, Hendrik, Rudolph, back to you.
So, I mean, to me, Jacob Fatu feels like a real deal, like Wild Samoan. Like, he's giving legitimacy to the new bloodline. I mean, what do you see with him in the near future? I mean, has he been over-delivering and maybe making the rest of the bloodline seem a little lame?
Javier, what do you think?
Well, from what I have read, that was a worry. No, I think the entire group has been violent enough in the last few times that I see them more as a complete unit right now, which is what you mentioned earlier, Wade, that one sees Solo as possibly beating Cody, but I see it more like it's the whole bloodline unit. As a single unit. So Cody has to overcome the other one, and there you might get more, more of it opens the field up a little bit more in that case. I still don't think he's going to beat Cody. Cody's going to find a way, but he's going to have to contend with Jacob Fatu, who's the, obviously he's being built as the new enforcer and the new, he's, Solo Sikoa squared, basically, is the role that he's on. And he's delivering in that respect, which I think also, like, when you think that, oh, well, he's like a better version of Solo, it kind of hurts Solo also in comparison with it. I do think that they should give something to Tangaloa, who's done absolutely nothing. So I think maybe he should take some take one of Cody's friends out back and shoot him. Do something nefarious, because I mean, because he's also not, he doesn't also have the intensity that Tamatanga has, because Tamatanga has intensity. I mean, just looking at you, I mean, he'll scare you. Tangaloa is definitely more of a cerebral, laid back kind of guy, and I think he's got to show his danger, because he's the only one in the group that hasn't really shown dangerous. And while Solo hasn't been showing super dangerous recently, we've seen him be dangerous earlier in the bloodline. We know what he's capable of, and he still has those moments, because I do think that the Samoan spike that he delivers is definitely impressive for me. Like a monstrous, like, I'm gonna impale you with it. So I think the overall, I think he does enhance the group. I don't think it really it could get that way if he starts like just straight up destroying everybody, but it's too early to tell right now. I mean, it would be a concern of mine, though.
Yeah. All right, Hendrik, back to
you. All right, one last thing that's kind of silly, but Tiffany Stratton does the Tippy Time, which is a direct ripoff of Dame Time from Damian Lillard. What?
Uh-huh. Oh, I was just doing play-by-play for our audio listeners that you're pointing at your wrist.
Oh, right on. Yeah, pointing at my wrist. Yep. Like, there's a watch on my wrist. I'm pointing at it.
Yeah.
But I worked at the Moda Center in Portland for a while and ran into Damian Lillard multiple times. And I know he's a huge pro wrestling fan. And, like, I have some of he has, like, his own brand of Adidas shoes that are, like, Stone Cold Steve Austin versions and Ric Flair versions, which I have. But do you think Damian Lillard could be a part of Tiffany Stratton's entourage?
I don't. I mean, maybe, but I mean, Tiffy Time's an alliteration, and I don't think it's so unique to Damian Lillard that it has to be that. But as a guy from Portland, I can see you wanting to connect the dot. What do you think, Javier?
Yeah, I think that actually, since lately they've enjoyed having showing off local celebrities, local sports stars. You had the boxer today. That actually might be interesting if she wins the title. She has an entourage, and part of her entourage would be the people who you would feature in those moments, walking out with her. Different sports stars and stuff. And get cute with that. That actually might be interesting for her because people once I expect her to be, when she wins the title, I'm pretty sure she's going to end up winning the title at some point. Be like an ostentatious kind of presentation with it, because that kind of seems like that's her thing.
Rude Dog, thank you.
All right, thanks so much, guys. Have a great night. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, thank you. We appreciate you. All right, let's go to another video caller here. Brad in Florida making his YouTube debut with us. Brad, welcome. Good to see you. Good to talk to you again.
Hey guys, it's great to see you, Wade. Javier, nice to see you too, man.
Yeah.
I started watching on a delay tonight, so I didn't get to you guys until like just a little bit ago. So my apologies if I bring up things that maybe have been brought up. You could just stop me or cut me off or whatever. But a few things that I just want to be negative, if that's okay. Like things that I want to bring up that I just didn't like. Yeah, I just want to The first thing I really hated, and I'm sure it's been talked about, was Melo losing. You didn't bring up Gunther and have him lose match after match after match. To me, Andrade is fine. He's a great pro wrestler. I just think there's a little bit of a language barrier. There's a little bit of a lack of connection with the crowd. I just don't see why Melo has to lose to him when Melo was a absolute superstar, top of the card in NXT, and a guy that has so much potential on the mic, in the ring, in every way, character, charisma, every single thing. That really, really bothered me that he had to lose to Andrade. Now, I'm not saying Andrade doesn't deserve a win here and there, whatever. I just don't think on the streak, you're really defining Melo down and making him look terrible, in my opinion. That just bothered me. If I could go to another thing, like with Bayley, I'm supposed to hate Tiffany Stratton and be rooting for Bayley, technically, right? I mean, that's technically what I'm supposed to be.
For sure.
As a viewer. Sure. We have this very conceited kind of music video promo from Tiffany where, she's the best. Everything comes easy to her. And then by the end, Bayley's breaking her briefcase. And I'm feeling like, wow, Tiffany's being bullied. And look, Mia Chin is laughing at her. And Bayley's laughing at her. And it made you feel legitimately sympathetic towards Tiffany. I mean, that's what I got out of it. So that was just something I didn't like also about this episode. And then, thirdly, just I maybe you guys give me your thoughts on those things, but I just felt like it felt like Tiffany was on the sympathetic end of this tonight,
So, Brad, I'll say as far as the Tiffany thing goes, keep in mind that Tiffany hit Bayley from behind last week. So, anything she does, there's what she did this week was in response to that in context.
Yeah.
So, from what you're saying in terms of, hey, she kind of asked for it, she had it coming, that kind of thing. They did set it up, because I think you have a point. It might have. I don't know if the announcers underlined that or not. Like, hey, Bayley's, after what Tiffany did to Bayley last week, you can imagine it building up over a week and her looking for an opportunity for.
I just think, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just think there was a better way to go about it. Like, you could have just had, to me, you could have just had Tiffany, Bayley comes ringside, Tiffany immediately takes that briefcase and just wants to nail her with it, and then gets stopped, and then she breaks the briefcase or something. Not just like, ha, 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 you're in the ring, I'm breaking your shit. I'm sorry to curse. I'm breaking your stuff. I just feel like there was a better way to go about it. I understand this was probably a mechanism to get the pink glittery briefcase, right? Because now the white and green one is destroyed. Yep. So I understand that, but still, it just I don't know. I just felt bad for Tiffany, and like Nia was like just there, like looking sad too. I don't know. Whatever. I get what you're saying though.
You want to add anything, Javier, to that?
Well, I mean, part of the problem is that Bayley never had her babyface turn. She was, kicked out of her group, and she has basically not really changed her demeanor much at all. She's just not being, really annoying, but she's still doing some of that, some of her heel shtick. So yeah, I'm not overly sympathetic for what Bayley's doing. So, Tiffany Stratton, if you're being, they're not really giving you a reason to cheer one over the other. They're both kind of scummy. So, so you're left between choosing which one of these two. And, if you like Tiffany better, this feels almost more like a heel versus heel matchup than a true babyface, someone we can get behind and really want to see her succeed, because they haven't really given us anything to chew on when it comes to Bayley. It was, she beat her former tag team, heel tag team characters. I mean, they're trying to sell that she was a good teammate and stuff like that, but she was a good teammate for the heels. She's never really owned up to that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not overly sympathetic for her. I mean, of everybody involved in the women's division, is probably like Chelsea Green's almost the one I'm most sympathetic to in that entire division. But yeah, I kind of get, it's one of those cases, to pick them, just choose whoever you like most. And yeah, you could kind of almost feel like, we're not at Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, everybody overreacting in the revenge kind of story, but yeah, I can see that.
I think they did enough to make Bayley seem sympathetic with the whole, the faction that turned on her. I mean, Damage Control were mean girls. They, excluded her. They ganged up on her. They snickered. They deceived her. They strung her along. They turned her. I think, yes, Bayley was. And I think there was just enough of her acknowledging, that she took a turn and went on a wrong path. I mean, there could have been. It's never. I harp on it. I don't like when when heels turn babyface, because heels reject them, and that shouldn't be the reason fans cheer for them. But they told a long story arc with Bayley where you gained sympathy for her, where you could see her trying to belong to a group and being excluded. And I thought it was relatable for a lot of people. And in the end, you're like, yeah, Bayley did some bad things, but then she did, some promos and vignettes explaining what her purpose of Damage Control was, where her heart was, what the motivation was, and then it got taken out from under her. So it's not a perfect babyface turn. I get that, but I just want to give WWE a little more credit, some credit for trying to emotionally bring the fans into supporting her. Brett, back to you.
Just one thing. Go ahead. Hit on what you said, Wade. The only issue I have with that is that she was the one who brought this team together. So that story that you're describing is what Sami Zayn did. Sami Zayn was trying to belong to the Bloodline, and then then that's where the sympathy is, because you felt sympathetic towards him because he wanted to belong to a group that he wasn't a part of. Bayley created the group, and then it was more like, and it was a bad group, and she gets her, so like in the Mean Girls one, she's the one who's like the real mean girl who created the group, and then she gets kicked out. Maybe the sequel, you could tell that story of like, she learned her lesson. It just never felt like she learned her lesson, or it wasn't really hammered home at that point. So that's why I'm still waiting for, because at least if she had changed her attitude, because it's that laugh, Wade. I just gotta say, it's just that laugh.
Well, that's not good. I mean, just a little pushback on the Bayley thing is, yes, she formed a heel group and she wanted to be a leader and they wanted to dominate and all that. But when, other people show up I have Mia in my head. Who showed up? Who got out of the group? I'm drawing
Asuka.
Kairi Sane is who I'm trying to think of. Kairi Sane, yeah. I went blank on Kairi. All of a sudden, they were closer friends, and Bayley suddenly felt excluded. And I think they told the story long enough where you started to gain some sympathy for her. You go, well, yeah, she was a heel. She was bad. She did bad things. But it's never cool if you form a group to then have that group, without Bayley having done anything wrong, just start talking behind her back and making fun of her. I'm not defending it as a perfect storyline. I think there's a journey that they took fans on where a lot of people did develop sympathy for Bayley, going, yeah, she was a jerk, but she's not as big of a jerk as these so-called friends. You're supposed to, even among a villain group, you're supposed to, there's supposed to be honor among thieves. And the thieves in Bayley's group did not honor her leadership, and they weren't upfront with her when they decided to undercut her. Brad, back to you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that, guys. I mean, I just think that Bayley's run, whatever this has been extraordinarily underwhelming. And I just think they've done her a real disservice. I mean, it's not her fault, but I can't even think of who she defended it against, honestly. I mean, I know she defended it once or twice, but if she's about to lose to Nia, this is way worse than Logan Paul's U.S. title run, way worse than Io Sky's run for sure, which was, pretty long in retrospect. But I'm trying to think of, she hasn't done anything. I mean, literally, Liv Morgan has done more as women's champion than since she's become it than Bayley has. I mean, in my opinion. So I don't know, man. I just found that segment to be a little off-putting to me. And I know
Brad,
she really.
Let me pause you before you.
Yeah.
Let me pause before you switch topic. It sounds like you're about to transition. I put these on the screen, but for the majority of our audience are audio-only podcast listeners. We built that audience up for years and years, and I want to let them know what people are saying in the chat too before we move on. Derek said the group she created ostracized and ignored her. From a human perspective, I think that makes for a sympathetic character. And then Mayface says, not saying Bayley is a heel, but I thought she was doing heelish stuff tonight. So a couple perspectives there, Brad.
Yeah, and my very last thing is, and this probably came up. If it did, just whatever. With Kevin,
we did talk
Owens
about Carmelo, by the way, quite a bit. So when you listen back,
yeah,
you'll hear what we said.
I'll rewind it back. With Kevin
Yeah.
Owens with the neck to the chair on the neck and being taken out. Randy
Yes.
was taken out the week before. This is obviously a mechanism where Cody now has no allies, no friends, and after this SummerSlam match, even if he wins and is getting taken out, there's no one to help him, right? That's what this is, right? And who is going to help him at the end of that match? I mean, is that where we're going? I mean, is there any other way to go?
I mean, I think that's where they're going. I mean, Dustin Rhodes' contract with AEW expires in September.
Right.
So, I mean, we can get to that. He wrote, yes, my contract's up in September, and no, I'm absolutely not done. I'm having the best matches of my life, and hopefully, God willing, I'll get to retire on my own terms, respect with a full heart. Hopefully, negotiations go well. So now he's saying negotiations go well. He's not saying who they're with, but I assume he means AEW. And he says he wants to take care of family first. So I throw that out there. I mean, in Arn Anderson, we had the Enforcer reference. So, I mean, there's different directions that they can go in. But yeah, obviously they're knocking off Cody's people. We talked earlier in the show, Brad, maybe that's the setup for Roman Reigns to come in and be the guy who, when Cody is alone and they really, of course, WWE's going to hammer it hard because that's what they do. Cody has no friends left. It's like, well, they're, LA Knight's hanging out backstage. Where someone mentioned, multiple people in the chat room mentioned DIY. They got taken out by the Bloodline, so DIY could step up for them, but they could get taken out again. So anyway, Brad, back to you.
And the last thing that I just wanted to complain about just a little bit is the mystery partner thing. If the mystery partner, to me, you don't want Kevin Owens to come out and be a disappointment. And I'm not saying that crowd did get into him. Of course, they're excited when he came out. I didn't get the sense he was a complete disappointment, but why not just have him right after that match in the backstage when Cody's talking to Aldis? Kevin Owens walked by, hey man, I got your back, whatever. Why do this whole mystery partner thing? I'm thinking, is it going to be Joe Hendry? Is it going to be Seth Rollins? Is it going to be Jey Uso? Is it going to be Jimmy Uso? Honestly, that's what I'm thinking. And to see Kevin Owens, which we've seen this so many times, I just don't like the whole mystery partner. Ooh, who's it going to be angle when there's only one person it really could be. That's just the only other complaint I have about the show. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite SmackDown, but I didn't think it was atrocious by any means. But just those three little things, the Mello thing, the Bayley thing, and the mystery partner thing were the things I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Brad. Well, as far as the mystery partner, I mean, when it would just happen to be Kevin Owens, it's like okay. It didn't necessarily have to be him. It could have been a surprise. But when it was him, it's like, oh, it's the guy who we would expect it to be. and they just did the mystery partner gimmick to hold us over, hoping it would be something more novel. Kevin Owens is great. People like Kevin Owens. They could have announced it ahead of time, but the reason they did it is they wanted to hold the mystery partners work, and they wanted to hold the audience. And it's not a bait and switch, but it's a tease and switch, I guess. I don't. Maybe that's not much of a difference. What do you think, Javier?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it was unnecessary. Everybody would have known that it was likely going to be Kevin Owens because he wasn't involved in last week's issues. I mean, I think it would have been, in character for Kevin Owens to have shown him up and have him in a skit where, like if not immediately, dude, I know they get cute with some of their camera angles and the camera pans over and there's Kevin Owens. Or maybe you see him, you didn't really need to do it, but I ultimately I don't think it was really necessarily harmless because it's not like he was a downgrade from what you could think of, unless you were thinking that maybe Cena was already, starting his comeback tour. That would be, if you don't know when his tour is going to start or that he's filming it. Well, he's filming Peacemaker now, so.
Yeah,
cool.
I'll let you guys get to someone else or some other things, but it's just, to me, honestly, I was thinking my first instinct was Jimmy Uso. It's like he's coming back and he's going to shake hands with Cody somehow,
cool.
and some really cool moment. And I was like, maybe it's Jay, maybe it's like, because when Solo said it's going to be a disrespect to the bloodline, whoever this partner is, and it's Kevin Owens. Of course it's Kevin Owens. It was just whatever. But thank you guys. It was nice to see you both, and have a good evening. And I'll listen back and forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. For our YouTube people who are new, he is a regular caller on our Blog Talk Radio day only. So this was his video debut. Video caller day. We'll go to up next. Great to see you. Welcome. What's on your mind about SmackDown tonight?
Just to sound off about Carmelo Hayes a bit, because I can tell that a lot of fans who saw him in NXT are worried about him. I just kind of look at it from the perspective of the best thing you can be in his circumstance is a heel, because if he was a babyface and he was falling short of his draft pick or of his status, you would look at him as a disappointment. But when you're a braggadocious heel, if you choke on a promo, people are like, oh, he choked. Haha, that's heat. And if you come up short in a match where you bragged like you were going to win it, I think people are like, oh, you choked. That gets heat. So I think right now, the fact that they sell him as a guy who has potential, but who thinks he's on a certain level, but doesn't reach what his potential is, I think that's a natural sports story that you see play out every time you have a high draft pick or a quarterback who's heavily touted and they think that they're great. And then when they come up short, Zach Wilson from the Jets comes to mind. You're almost like, oh, he deserves it. He needs to get better. And then he can live up to what his potential is. So that's kind of how I see the Carmelo Hayes thing. As long as he's given a chance on TV, and he's getting minutes, you can tell that they're invested in him in some way. I think he's being given a chance to be something more than a mid-carder. And like you mentioned, Wade, not everybody is going to be a main eventer, even if they were a main eventer in NXT. And I think the best thing you can hope for as a new talent, especially if you're young, is you want your boss to give you a chance to shine. And then you'll fall where your talent lies. And I think that's where Carmelo Hayes is right now.
And honestly, Carmelo didn't do himself great favors with his early mic work. I mean, maybe they want to do more with him, and he kind of stumbled a little bit out of the gate. And so they might have thought, you know what, let's just have him here. There's talent, but, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, sometimes they have more plans for someone, and then they get on the big spotlight, it doesn't work out, but I think he's on a long arc and he'll be fine. I don't think that he's going to get buried and cut. Javier, you want to add anything to that, or you don't have to?
Well, and I think as you mentioning that him having issues, in the promo department, those happen when they were live, and A lot of his stuff now has been in the back and has been they had that barbershop thing, which I'm assuming is a callback to his stuff in NXT, because I think I remember saying that once, because I didn't follow NXT, and so I think he's probably more comfortable in that, so they're putting him in that position. But that might be because I agree with you, Derek, that I thought that was the path that he was going to go on, that he was going to be braggadocious, and he had that encounter with Lashley. I keep going back to that because that was a cool thing, and then he disrespected Lashley, and then Lashley was going to teach him a lesson, but then that, I don't know what happened there with that whole situation. That also could have hurt, because then if he was supposed to have a feud with Lashley and then that died out, there might not have been a spot for him, so then they basically had him jumping around. And that also might account for some of the losses that that didn't feel as important, because losing Lashley wouldn't be like an embarrassment or like hurt him. But the thing is, the issue I think a lot of people have with the Andrade situation is that Andrade hasn't really been Andrade is someone who also has to prove himself. So because he's not like a top, he's not like on Lashley's level. I think that kind of also is why a lot of people are upset at this specific loss against Andrade. But I do think that was the path that he was going to go on. But I think that the promo situation also might have been something that ended up hurting him.
Yeah, and to me, I always kind of have a hope when it comes to new wrestlers, and that's not that everybody gets to be at the very top of the card, because then it's not the top of the card; it's just the card. And I think what you can always hope for is that people get a chance. They get a chance to maximize their minutes, and they get a chance to showcase what makes them special or what makes them a mid-carder. And I think giving someone a chance and then seeing where they fit and using that piece to elevate your show and make a cohesive product, that has been significantly better over the last 2 years. Because a lot of times I look at it and people blame the booking. This guy fell short because of the booking. And you like to say it's because of the booking, especially if it's somebody with some talent in some way. It's not always the booking. It's like Wade mentioned. They come up short on a promo, or you give them a live mic a few times and they fall on their face. Or even though they had a great match, you wanted a specific story or something to be accomplished in the match, not just having hit a whole bunch of great moves and executing them perfectly. But if you didn't tell that story, you took those 8 minutes and you actually did not fulfill your goal or your purpose with that 8-minute match. Even if fans online say it was a great match, that's not the be all end all, because I don't think that's what leads to an increase in interest in business.
Al Snow would always talk about what it cost, how valuable each minute of TV time is, and you compare it to what advertisers pay and the rights fees, and he'd tell wrestlers that, like, it's, carpe diem, carpe minute, whatever the term would be, seize the minute you have, seize the 5 minutes you have, make them good, make a good impression. And if you screw up, don't screw up again and try to make up for it. So no question about it. I mean, they're watching and they evaluate. But like I said, ultimately he'll be fine. I think he'll be part of the roster for a while. And I think part of what fans just have to realize, you got to be patient. Just sometimes someone's not going to get pushed like Braun Breaker is out of the gate, or Jade Cargill, for all kinds of reasons. And you don't have to agree with it, but don't necessarily panic. I think there's sometimes reasons to panic, but WWE usually makes pretty good decisions. Usually, track record, especially this current Levesque-led group. Derek, anything else?
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that, some person I think has been maximizing their minutes and they're getting more has been Michin. I mean, they have found a babyface who's a mid-card to lower-card babyface, but she made Tiffany Stratton look really good this week. Her bumps were nice and crisp. She took them all to perfection. And last week, I think she had a really solid outing with Nia. And I think that's what you want to see in every wrestling promotion. People who are given a chance, and then when they excel, they're given a bigger and a better chance. And as long as they're doing that, I think they're in a good place. So tip the hat to Michin. I thought she did a really good job making Tiffany look very good today. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it, as always. Javier, you want anything?
No, I mean, I've always enjoyed Michin ever since she was Jade back in TNA. I really liked that's one of my favorite feuds was Jade and Rosemary.
All right. By the way, JC Scooby 1976 says Carmelo should have never been brought up. It's a little harsh. Ken Arnold, but I mean, harsh isn't always untrue, and it's a valid opinion. Ken Arnold says it takes time. Carmelo Hayes would be fine. LA Knight ended up at a solid place for the most part. Braun Breaker looks good so far. It helps to work with Sami Zayn, who's a great wrestler and talker. There's a WWE put up a clip of Andrade, I guess, giving props to Carmelo for their match tonight. So they're I didn't get to push play on it, but I'm kind of curious why they're doing that. What that, if that means anything, or it's just breaking the fourth wall a little bit for the sake of social media. Okay, let's go to the email here, our mailbag, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Ryan from Winnipeg says, I'm just reaching out to say that I thought the Tiffany Stratton video package that aired prior to her match tonight was amazing. Holy smokes, I'm blown away. I know these sorts of packages were common when Triple H was running NXT, but this one just blew me away. The way they included gymnastics footage blended into her in-ring clips, this was just brilliant, and I think is indicative of the new direction they're going with the presentation of pro wrestling. It's amazing what the new production team is churning out, and I am here for it. Thanks, and have a good night. Yeah, I praise that in my at PWTorch.com, Javier, tonight. I mean, that's how you make someone seem like a star, is you put the elbow grease into it, as I say, as they say, put some effort into shining up their persona. And it wasn't just highlight clips, it was her verbal stuff. She's good on the mic, and they got her personality. So I just thought it was well done. You don't want to do that for everybody, but the stuff like they've done for Gunther is another example of just really effectively framing somebody in a way that maximizes their star power. What'd you think?
Yeah, agree with you there. And different presentations like the Carmelo Hayes one. And also I appreciate every now and then when you have a show like this that's not like a star-studded, like important show, having that long trail in the beginning to fill you in on everything that's been going on with the Bloodline, to get you up to speed on what's been going on to this point. In your major storyline. I think that's important also because it does two things. Is if you're not a person, if you like miss a week, you don't want to be like, oh, what did I miss that week? And that also kind of like, if you happen to miss a week for a reason, that creates a jumping off point too, because you're like, oh, if I was able to wish this week, I don't know what's going on. I have to, So it's important to also have like the previously on, Stargate, that you want to have that. I mean, you don't want to like overdo it and necessarily open all this every show that way, and that way you can mix things up. But you do want to have at least some point where the point you're trying to get over on that show is reinforced, particularly when it's a major storyline like the Bloodline, and it also helps showing Heyman getting taken out, Randy Orton getting taken out, if that kind of thing, that to show that those were important moments, as opposed to have like this very heavy angle and like you're just moving on the next week. So I think that's all the presentation in that respect, I think, adds to your enjoyment of the show. It could go overboard, like, in the days where like every commercial break was a replay of what happened in the first 5 minutes, and then a replay of what happens in the first that replay, yeah. And then a replay of that replay. That got like monotonous really quick, where you could fast forward the show in like 30 minutes, raw in 30 minutes, because that's all the footage you really had. You don't want to get to that point, but there is a happy medium.
And some of those, there's a video package where the announcers are underlining, adding to things. They're not replay. It's the replay is a backdrop for the announcers to comment on something that just happened and steer the viewers in a direction of how they should feel about something. Guide them with an emotional response. If you have announcers who the viewers care about and trust their opinion, then having a video package where that commentary is added to it is adding another dimension. And WWE is definitely guilty of what you said, Javier, where they were, too many. Here's what you just watched. Let's just put it together. But I do like underlining. I like emphasizing and guiding viewers and having emotional outrage by the announcers to kind of keep it on your mind. I don't think you want out of sight, out of mind. We go to break, now it's on to the next thing, and you don't talk about it. I mean, there's, my go-to example was on a pay-per-view 20 years ago, whatever it was, on TNA. Jim Mitchell either was set on fire or set someone on fire. Memories. I think he was set on fire, and then he just like showed up on TV. That no one talked about it on the next TV show. Like someone was set on fire on a burning table, and it's like that was just not for fans to be like, whoa, but it meant nothing on the next TV show. Like you can't set someone on fire and not replay it and talk about it. But there are other things that are very ordinary that we do not need a 30-second recap of right after the commercial break. So, every situation needs to be evaluated on its own.
Well, and to give props to the sound guys also, the soundtrack that goes with it also enhances it because you don't have the soundtrack when you're watching it live. You're making a little mini movie, and so you can see where the highlights, where the stuff that you're meant to remember. And sometimes you'll go through the early part that's like they're showing you the clips quickly, and then you get Heyman getting put through the thing, and they do that in slow motion. So to really emphasize that moment and how important that is.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, Junaid has an email with some questions. I usually never think matches are must-win because I think that's usually melodramatic. But personally, I was nodding along with a lot of what Logan Paul was saying about LA Knight, but then was also nodding along with Knight because it appears Logan has legitimately been ducking, was making good points on his own. Although I feel like the balloon that represents this match definitely deflated when Logan said he has so much going on besides the title that if he loses, and it isn't a big deal. That's something the build up to the Ospreay match. On one hand, it is true, and of course, the heel will pretend being a champion in WWE means less than it does to some people who've never won a championship, which puts the pressure on LA Knight. It also gives Logan an excuse if he loses and him getting a rematch because that was on his other business ventures. On the other hand, it means LA Knight, if he doesn't win, then I think the perception may become reality that LA Knight is nowhere near a top guy. So, is SummerSlam a must-win for LA Knight? By the way, heel saying it is fine, Javier. Like, more fine. I mean, every situation should be judged. But a heel going, I don't care if I lose the title. And they want to keep the title, but they're saying preemptively, if I lose, I'm not going to be that upset. That's just whatever. I mean, it's like if you lose a game of pickup basketball or pickleball or tennis, I wasn't even trying, or I don't care if I win after you lose. It takes it's being a bad sport. He's preemptively being a bad sport about it while also bragging about what a hot shot he is and how much more he has in his life than LA Knight. But it works for LA Knight as a babyface because pro wrestling fans want wrestling to be the beyond all, the everything in their life. It can also just seem mean because people are like, does LA Knight really have nothing else other than this? And you can kind of feel like that gets you more behind him because this is a singular focus and he needs this. This is all he has. So I don't have a problem with it, but Junaid has a good point, which is we're going to find out if LA Knight is someone they care about, because my short answer is it's not a must-win from LA Knight, but it's a revealing finish the way that it's been set up. Because if he doesn't beat Logan Paul, that's WWE saying, yeah, Logan is a much bigger star. I would argue he is and should remain so. But he's such a big star, we don't care if we sacrifice LA Knight. He's going to have to go away for a little while and come back in a lower position. What do you think, Javier?
Well, I mean, it's must win if your expectation is what you said. If you have higher expectations for LA Knight, because a loss, like you said, it will require rebuilding, in that respect. Mm-hmm. Particularly when Logan hit him with you'll never be champion and start talking about his lack of success. I think that was kind of like, I think, the tell, because at that point, if you're going to go that route, you don't want him to lose unless he's going to another territory, basically. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the most likely will win, and have him involved in other stuff. But and that's it. And what you were saying, it works because he's the heel and he's also an outsider who is like trying to pretend that I'm still too cool for WWE, when in reality he wants to fit in too. So you kind of like I don't want to lose this, but it looks really cool, and just the whole heelish dynamic.
Yeah. All right. Junaid also says, if Solo wins at SummerSlam, is he ready to handle the responsibility of being the top champion? Junaid adds, I don't think he will win. I believe Roman will get involved. But if Cody slipped on a banana peel, so to speak, is Solo at a level where he'd be a believable top champion? Personally, I think he's definitely getting there, but something about his performances make me think another year of doing promos in the main event spotlight and having high-profile matches will be when he feels ready for this sort of role. It's no shame because Roman wasn't really ready until he became a heel, but it could also be that I'm wrong and that Solo is definitely ready to win a championship and carry it for a while. So if Solo wins the title at SummerSlam, is he ready to handle the responsibility of being a top champion for a proper run? Javier, I think it would be a stretch. How about you?
No, I mean, if he ends up winning it, it's going to be in the transitional sense to get it to probably Roman, on the other side, if they're going to do something along those lines. I don't think that he will have a full-blown run. Not right now. Maybe, not as the character is. I think this is going to be more of he's trying to copy what Roman Reigns does, fails against Cody, and that's just going to drive him up another level of, crazed.
Yeah. Okay. Next from Junaid, how long until Austin Theory looks like a complete idiot for not seeing Grayson Waller for what he is? This storyline's been going on for a couple of months now, and seeing Theory and Waller coming out on SmackDown together and their demeanors, I was wondering if they had backtracked on the impending breakup. But with Waller again sacrificing Theory, I think next week is pivotal in whether Theory can be a babyface that everyone can root for. He absolutely must continue questioning Waller and accuse him of being openly suspicious of him very soon, especially since so many wrestlers are telling him about Waller every week. You don't want this to be a Mizdow situation. So how long, Javier, can they go before Theory looks like a complete idiot for not seeing Waller for what he is? I don't think this goes back a couple of months. Maybe I'm wrong. Junaid said it goes back a couple of months. It seems like it goes back like 3-4 weeks when they really revved it up. But maybe my memory is, my sense of time is wrong. Javier, what do you think?
I think there might have been like teases here and there, and then went on the back burner, kind of the way they did it. But yeah, I mean, I think that time was probably like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. The last time that he threw someone in the way, I think, but he was able to talk himself out of it. Grayson Waller did. So I'm like, okay, but it's got to be, it's got to be pretty soon. And I don't want it to be in a situation where Grayson just, hits him. I think it needs to be it has to be initiated by Austin Theory at this point. I think it's got to be, initiated by him and not like, his heel tag team partner turns on. Because he's getting too smart to it.
Yeah. Sean with another super chat. Thank you, Sean. You're too generous. I like the small build to Theory's face turn. It was great hearing Nick from Brattleboro last week. Go VIP, everyone. He meant I like the slow build, not small build. So he just added that. I was wondering if that's the word he meant. So what do you think, Javier? In terms of, well, let me frame it this way. If Theory turns face, is this the right time to go all in with him, or do you think he turns face, but it's not a sign that they have really big plans for him? I mean, it does the pace of the build matter a lot? Because if as Junaid says, it's potentially too slow. Sean is saying he likes the slow build. If the idea is to do something really big with Theory coming out of this, maybe that really matters. You want him to like a guy who wasn't super slow on the uptake, but you also want to build up for the proverbial hot tag or the hot turn. So it's kind of competing forces here in terms of the pace of things.
In an ideal world, the DIY that we have now would be the super hot DIY that was in NXT. He when the turn happens, he turns to his former mentor in Johnny Gargano, who's going to mentor him again, except to do things the right way this time, and then set up a feud with the Bloodline. Because since the attack happened, I'm expecting the Bloodline to come after the tag team titles, and Austin Theory be involved in that against the Bloodline. I think is what's going to end up happening, because I don't see anything on the other side of Austin Theory what to do, but I could see him involved in a be the next step for the other members of the Bloodline, for the Guerrillas of Destiny and Jacob Fatu.
And finally, Junaid says, has Nia Jax improved enough since 2017 to counter Bayley's clumsy, reckless claims? I feel like the reckless comment felt a little too meta, but I still liked it because it honored history. Plus, Bayley had a right to be upset as a professional who's very polished at what she does. I like Nia and feel she has a place on the roster, and I give credit where it's due, but regardless of whether you agree is useful on the roster now, she has improved enough in the ring to justify getting a title shot at their second or third big. Has she improved enough to deserve getting a title shot at their second or third biggest event of the year? By the way, quick aside, is SummerSlam or Royal Rumble the number 2 event for WWE?
No, I've got SummerSlam as the number 2 event.
Yeah, me too. And I think just part of it, just the distance. It's sort of in between. It's more distance from WrestleMania, May, June, July. I mean, it's like 4. Yeah. Anyway, I always slip on that because Rumble, sometimes did better buy rates and people were looking forward to it. And SummerSlam has had weak lineups over the decades. But I like to think of it as the showcase event, and Rumble is more a prequel to WrestleMania.
And it is a lot of storylines end up being built towards the to SummerSlam, while Royal Rumble is usually the beginning of the road to WrestleMania. So so the SummerSlam is an end point of what they work towards towards.
Yeah, I always hesitate when I say SummerSlam's the number 2 event of the year, but I want it to be, and I think it should. I think it's fair to say that for the reasons that we both said. All right, so Junaid says, I don't feel like Nia has had that many overly great matches of late. Her match with Rhea in Australia at the Australia show was pretty sloppy at times, but I feel she certainly had good matches, like the Michin match last week, and she's been a great heel. I guess I'm viewing her through the standards of the last 10 years or so, though. I'm sure she'll do great at SummerSlam. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about this earlier, but, I mean, what do you think of Nia Jax's in-ring work, Javier? I don't think we got into that particularly. Is she, I mean, nobody's gotten hurt. I think she does seem more polished and more responsible. I've asked around a little bit in WWE, and I mean, I don't sense there's a lot of resentment, but I think some people were on guard about her. But I think she's getting, good reviews for being someone who was a little controversial and there was some resentment built up.
Yeah, I mean, and it felt like. It felt like she was being built mainly for that run that she had when she first came in, and the fact that she has now a run coming after that tells me that they're happy with the work that she did. That's what it tells me. I do think she's improved a lot. In terms of that promo, you could have called back to the previous history without using the word reckless and just say, "Hey, you hurt me and you took me out, and I'm angry over that," without saying that it's because you were unsafe. Because that's what it was. She's saying you were an unsafe wrestler, and that's the only reason that that's the reason I'm angry with you, because you were an unsafe wrestler. That's not in storyline. But yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed the stuff that she does, and like I said, I think that a lot of the go away heat is actually like legit heat, and I mean, it's kind of what Jericho's doing over in AEW, where he has taken the legit go away heat and used that to create this character that now people, because the people who are like booing him with legit go away heat are leading the boos of the other people who are enjoying his act. And it's one of those where eventually that go away heat kind of kind of like becomes the actual heat that you want towards the character. Because one of the things that nobody mentioned, I haven't talked to AEW while I'm sorry, I'm talking about it now, was at the pay-per-view, there was the please retire, and other people were counter chanting that. So there are people who were in his case of that, and I think Nia Jax has done the same thing, where a lot of people are booing her, not booing her because you're a dangerous wrestler, or we remember because he took away our Kairi Sane, that kind of thing. I'm sure that there's still that bad blood there, but I think that a lot of the majority of the fans are actually booing her for the right reasons, or storytelling. Storytelling reasons. Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. Javier, anything else you want to add from tonight's show? Anything else in your notes?
I think we hit everything. Let me double check. No, we pretty much hit everything. Yeah, I mean, I think the door's a little bit more performant. I do not think necessarily he's going to show up. But because it could be also Randy Orton's return that is what turns the tide in favor of of Cody, and then the next night you can start setting up whatever you're going to do. Because what the next big one is? What? Do you know what the next big pay-per-view is?
They've got the show in Germany after SummerSlam, and then not Great Balls of Fire, Bad Blood.
Bad Blood
is being brought back. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but those are a couple of the big ones. And Survivor Series, obviously.
I mean, there's going to be a Saudi show in October, I think, usually.
Yeah.
So
It's
maybe
not an obvious place to do Cody Randy, but
but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Saudi show might end up being.
Yeah. All right, cool. Javier, tell people why they should listen to your show again.
It's just two people chatting, and I mean, we try to hit the big points in WWE, but we end up going off the rails. I'm never sure what made the air because Kevin's the one who edits it. Good.
When I threw to you, I was like, well, this would be a good chance for Javier to put over Kevin.
I mean, and he's been awesome. He definitely into the puns. Always trying to find a way to work one in, and I mean, we derail, just go all over the place. I mean, we've it's more. I approach it more as a fan of wrestling as opposed to like analyzing when I do one of these post shows. So it's more of a fan, two guys talking about, hey, what do you think about this? This was cool. This was stupid. More from a fan instead of whether it works or not.
Yeah, and that's fun. That's a good pitch for it too, because it's a different. It's not redundant for what we do here on the post show when we usually talk to you about what's good for business.
We end up talking a lot.
It's fun to be a fan.
I'm sorry. We end up talking a lot about movies too, old movies. Yeah. I think we were talking about Expendables and stuff like that this week. So again, I'm not 100% sure everything that made into it because we spent like quite a while. If you guys were a fan of the Andrew Socek and Mike McMahon, that's kind of like what we just started talking random stuff, but trying to go back to the wrestling, get back on track every now and then.
Yeah, and Kelly Wells and Tom Staup on NXT 8 years back, they do movie reviews and talk movies almost every week, maybe every week. So, I mean, the daily cast is fun. It's can be a little bit just a little looser because it's not like a live show. It's not the flagship where it's all the A topics. And so it's fun. So hopefully everyone checks it out. Just search PWTorch in your podcast app of choice and subscribe to the PWTorch Daily Cast. They are not here on YouTube, so you have to subscribe to the podcast, but we are compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all your top iOS and Android apps. You can also stream them directly from PWTorch.com. Everybody who's still watching us, show support for us by liking this show, liking this episode, comment below, and subscribe to our channel. We continue to grow, and we appreciate our new followers and those of you, especially who take the time to like the show and spread the word on social media, on Reddit, on Twitter X, on Facebook, wherever you are, Instagram. Just tell people about our show if you enjoy it, and tell them why they might like it too. Javier, great talking with you about pro wrestling as always. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for having me on, Wade.
Yep. Thanks to everybody in the chat, especially the super chats. Thank you so much for that. And we'll talk to you next time, everybody.